Today I'm going to tell you a story. A story that begins with a whisper in the heart of a windstorm. You're broke. I'm lonely. Stay in my bed tonight. But don't let those words fool you. Because behind that tender offer lies blood fire and secrets powerful enough to burn down a town. A woman running from her past, a man burying his guilt, and a name long thought, dead now returned from the shadows. Are you ready for this? She didn't belong here, and Red Bluff made sure she knew it. Dust clung to Clara Nash's hem as she stepped off the stagecoach, a single satchel in hand, and no one waiting. The town was sunburned and small, just a cluster of clapboard buildings clinging to the edge of nowhere. A hot wind pressed against her skin, whispering secrets in a voice only the desert could understand. She tightened the shawl around her shoulders and walked toward the only place she could remember, Hargrove's boarding house. The woman on the porch spotted her first. "Well, I'll be damned," Millie Hargrove muttered. "Clara Nash. Didn't think I'd see that name crawl back into my town." "I need a room," Clara said, her voice steady, but dry. "You'll find none here." Millie crossed her arms, squinting in the light. "I don't host ghosts." "I have coin." Clara lied. Millie shook her head. "It's not coin I'm worried about. It's curses." She turned back inside, shutting the door harder than needed. Clara stood on the porch a moment longer, heat rising behind her eyes. But she didn't cry. She'd done enough of that the day they pulled her husband's name from the wreckage and handed it to her on a folded telegram. She moved on. The sheriff's office stood silent, under the weight of memory. Levi Colt looked up as she entered, his face going still. "Clara, Sheriff." He said nothing for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair, studying her with tired eyes. "Town's quiet these days. You stir up ghosts, it won't stay that way. I just need one night. You'll get none." He stood. "Be gone by sunrise, Clara." "That's me asking nice." She found the old livery behind the smithy, abandoned but dry. Horses hadn't slept here in years, just dust rope and broken tools. Clara sank into a corner, her back against the wall, wrapping herself tighter in her shawl. Her satchel served as a poor pillow. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it. The wind picked up around midnight. It began as a whisper, but grew teeth fast. Sand crawled through the wood slats and into her lungs. She coughed, pulled her shawl over her head, and pressed herself into the wall, but the storm found every crack. Within minutes, she could barely see. The air turned red and violent, lashing her skin raw. She stumbled out, blinded by grit boots, slipping in dry earth. Then hoofbeats. A rider emerged from the storm like a ghost stitched from fire and ash. A broad silhouette shirt, open skin slick with sweat and dust muscles tensed with purpose. He swung off the saddle without a word, dropped beside her, and lifted her up with arms like carved oak. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was his face, unshaven, sun-worn and unreadable. She barely felt the arms that lifted her. Clara drifted in and out of darkness, the storm still screaming somewhere beyond. There was the scent of leather, pine, and blood. Then heat. The rocking rhythm of a horse beneath them. A voice low and steady, like a heartbeat steadying hers. But the words were lost in the wind. When she opened her eyes, it was to firelight. The cabin smelled of smoke and horses' cedar wood and something earthy. She was wrapped in a thick quilt, her boots off her shawl folded neatly beside her. Her lips were dry, throat aching. Every muscle in her body screamed. And then she saw him. The man knelt near the hearth, shirtless, under the flickering light, tending the flames. His skin was cut in places fresh from the storm, his chest broad and heaving slightly. His hair was damp, dark, curling at the ends. He looked like he'd been carved from the land itself. He glanced over his shoulder, eyes sharp and unreadable. You're lucky I ride out when I shouldn't, he said simply. Storm nearly took you. Clara struggled to sit up. Where? McCall Ranch. You passed out cold. He paused. I'm Weston. Folks call me West. Clara Nash. That earned the smallest flicker in his gaze, but he said nothing. She took in the room Simple Warren lived in, the kind of place built with both hands and silence. On a nearby shelf, a small stack of papers sat tucked beneath a horseshoe. She reached without thinking, then froze. Tucked between them was a yellowed clipping, frayed edges, familiar typeface. She pulled it free. Engineer dies in rail sabotage. Samuel Nash. Among the dead. Her husband's name. Her fingers trembled. She looked up slowly. West hadn't foot. Why would a stranger, a rancher, keep a clipping about her husband's death? If you too feel something beginning to stir between two souls who thought they had nothing left, hit that follow button and come with me into the next chapter of this story. The morning came soft with golden light filtering through the cracks in the cabin walls. Clara lay still, wrapped in the quilt that smelled faintly of cedar and horses as the weight of her body slowly returned to her. Her throat burned. Her arms ached. But she was alive. West had left a tin mug near the fire. Steam still curled from it. She sipped the bitter coffee, slowly watching the flames dance. The clipping was still in her lap. She folded it carefully and tucked it inside her satchel, unsure whether to ask him about it or if she wanted the answer at all. West returned a few minutes later, shirt open, chest streaked with dried sweat and red dust. The storm had left cuts across his collarbone and forearms, but he moved like none of them mattered. He didn't say good morning, just knelt by the fire and added another log. You sleep, some Clara said, voice hoarse. You'll need more. I don't plan to stay long. He nodded once, not pressing. That was something about him he didn't push, didn't fill silence with useless words. The quiet stretched long before she broke it. I don't know where I'm going, she whispered. Everything I had is gone. West looked at her then. Not like a man looks at a woman, but like a man looks at something already broken, something he recognized ceases. I know the feeling, he said. She stared at the fire, and so did he. And then he added softly, almost too low to catch, You're broke. I'm lonely. Stay in my bed tonight. Her breath caught. She looked at him sharply, but there was no lust in his eyes. Just tired kindness. Raw truth. For warmth, he added after a beat. You take the bed. I'll take the floor. She didn't answer, but she didn't say no. The sound of boots startled them both. A figure stood in the open doorway, hands on hips. You're terrible at hiding, Daisy Nash announced. Clara nearly dropped her cup. Daisy, what in God's name? I followed you. She marched inside, all freckled scowl and fire. Millie told me what town you were headed for. I hopped the back of a freight wagon. West stood clearly displeased. She yours? My niece, Clara sighed. She doesn't listen. Then she fits right in. Daisy looked around the room like a fox assessing a henhouse. Nice setup you got here, she said to West. You let every half-dead woman crawl out of the desert and move in. I'm not in the habit, he said evenly. I should hope not. They stayed. West didn't say yes, not out loud, but he didn't turn them away either. He brought in more firewood, left a stack of blankets near the hearth, cooked beans and eggs in a blackened skillet, and said nothing while they ate. Clara watched him in the evening shirt, loose muscles still sore from storm cleanup. He never sat too close, never asked questions. But the way he moved through the cabin, as if making space for her without knowing it, it stirred something in her. And deep inside, that stir was fear. Because this was the kind of quiet a woman could fall into. It was the third evening when Clara found the revolver. She was folding blankets near West's cot, when she noticed the glint half tucked beneath a saddlebag. Polished black steel pearl handle. It looked too clean, too cared for. She pulled it out gently. A symbol was etched into the grip, something sharp and coiled. It wasn't a brand she recognized from ranches or cattle. No, this was something else. Something meant to send a message. Behind her, West's boots sounded on the floorboards. "You shouldn't go poking in a man's things," he said quietly. Clara turned. I wasn't poking. I was folding. Their eyes locked. He didn't move to take the gun. Just stood there, shirt unbuttoned, arms crossed, watching her, like he already knew what she'd ask. That mark. It's not ranch business, is it? West exhaled slow. Used to ride with a crew. Long time back. Ain't proud of it. What kind of crew? The kind that robs banks, Clara. His voice was flat. But I got out. Clara set the gun back down. And the newspaper clipping. You never explained. West turned away. Maybe someday. She didn't press. But the shadows between them thickened. Later that night, Daisy came in from feeding the chickens with hay in her hair and questions in her eyes. That man, she whispered, nodding toward the barn. He's got a mark on his gun. Gang stuff. You see it? I saw, Clara replied. And I'm watching him. Daisy studied her aunt. Are you afraid? Clara paused. Not yet. The next morning, Elias Boone found Clara gathering eggs. You should know something, he said, wiping his hands on a rag. West has done wrong. We all have. But he's not the same man he was. Clara squinted up at him. Why tell me this? Because not everything stays buried. Not out here. Not for long. Then he walked away, leaving only dust and the thud of boots behind. Days passed. Clara watched West more closely, but the more she watched, the more her anger thinned into something warmer. He fixed the water pump, showed Daisy how to set traps for jackrabbit. He laughed once, just once, and it shook something loose in Clara's chest she hadn't felt in years. One night, she caught herself staring at his hands, rough, sun-darkened, but careful with tools, animals, and her suosi. She was starting to believe him. The twist came like thunder on a clear sky. Daisy burst into the cabin, cheeks flushed, fire in her voice. You were there. The night he died. West looked up from the hearth. Who? My uncle, she snapped. Samuel Nash. I read the rest of that clipping. There were no witnesses, but the conductor said he saw two men jump off the train before it derailed. West was still. Clara stepped forward. Daisy, no. The girl pointed. Ask him. Look at him. West stood slowly. He didn't look angry, just tired. I didn't kill your uncle, he said. But I was there. The room went dead quiet. Clara's breath caught in her throat. I tried to stop it, he continued. But I was too late. It wasn't supposed to go that way. I never meant for anybody to die. Daisy's voice cracked. So you ran, I disappeared, West said, jaw tight. I paid for it every damn day since. Clara's heart beat like a drum inside her chest. She didn't know what to feel, but somehow she knew it wasn't fear. By the fourth morning, Clara couldn't ignore the ache in her chest, the one that whispered, this couldn't last. West had given her space, firewood, food, silence, and the kind of shelter a woman dreams of when she's on the run. But every kindness only deepened the mystery. And mystery, Clara had learned, rarely came without a cost. While West and Elias rode out to check the north fence, Clara stayed behind. Daisy was out chasing lizards with a slingshot. The cabin was quiet. It was time. She moved through the space carefully, like a ghost retracing a past life. She checked under the bed behind the saddle rack, beneath the loose floorboard she'd noticed creak on her second day. There, wrapped in canvas, was a stack of letters. She opened the first. The handwriting was rough, but unmistakably West's. Most were unsent. Some were addressed to names she didn't know. but one she froze. To Levi Colt. She skimmed it. The letter was never mailed. Torn at the end, ink smudged by something that looked too much like regret. He'd tried to explain his role in the train wreck, the death of Samuel Nash, and something else. A woman named June. The name appeared 3 times before the letter abruptly ended. Clara folded it and slipped it into her pocket, heart pounding. Outside, a single horse approached. She stiffened until she recognized the silver star glinting in the sun. Sheriff Levi Colt dismounted like he owned the land. He stepped inside without knocking, hat in hand, eyes sharp. "Clara," he said, voice gravel thick. "Didn't expect you to last out here." "I wasn't planning to." He looked around slowly. "Where is he?" West took Elias north. "Fence lines near down." Levi gave a slow, bitter smile. "Still fixing things he broke, I see." She said nothing. He let the silence sit, then added, "People in town are talking. Millie's been chirping like a sparrow on firewood. Millie always talks. This time they're listening. About you. About him. A widow sleeping in a wanted man's cabin." "He's not wanted," Clara cut in, voice sharper than she meant. Levi raised an eyebrow. "Isn't he?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't know who he is, Clara." "Not really? You didn't know about the girl, did you?" Clara flinched. "What girl?" Levi stared a second longer, then said, "Ask him about June Colt. And ask yourself, what kind of man buries the past but keeps the shovel?" Then he was gone, spurs jangling like distant gunfire. That night, the air inside the cabin felt different. West returned late, sweat-soaked and quiet. His shirt was unbuttoned, hair damp at the temples. He looked exhausted and dangerously handsome in the firelight. But Clara kept her distance. She stirred beans in a pot, while Daisy mended a sock nearby. No one spoke much. The silence felt thick, stretched too thin. When West finally sat, Clara didn't look at him. Instead, she pulled the folded letter from her pocket and set it on the table between them. He stared at it for a long time before touching it. "You went looking," he said softly. "I needed to know what I'm sleeping under." He didn't open the letter, just looked at her weariness, softening his voice. "I wrote that years ago. Didn't finish it because I didn't think he'd read it. Figured Levi hated me too much to care." "He came by today," Clara said. West's jaw clenched. "And what did he say?" Clara met his gaze. "June Colt." A pause, a breath. And then West stood, walked to the fire, his back to her, voice barely above a whisper. "She was Levi's sister. And she died because of me." Clara stood by the fire, hands clenched around the back of a wooden chair. "You said she died because of you," she said quietly. "Start talking." West didn't look at her. He stared into the flames like they were pages in a book he didn't want to read aloud. "She trusted me," he said. "June was light. Too much for a man like me. Levi warned her, said I'd ruin her. And I did. How I brought her into a world she didn't belong in. When things went south with the gang after the rail job she tried to help me run, she got caught in the crossfire." He turned slowly. "Levi's hated me ever since. And my husband," Clara asked, voice hollow. "What about Sam?" West's shoulders tensed. "Your husband was on the company payroll. He knew about the damage to the bridge, knew it was unstable." Clara's breath caught. "He took money to ignore it," West continued. "My crew didn't blow it. We were meant to steal cargo further down the line. But someone inside wanted more than a simple heist. They wanted a message. So that crash was no accident." Clara's knees buckled slightly. "You knew this, and you said nothing." "I tried. The letter. The guilt. I left the gang after that night. Walked away from everything." She stared at him. "And still, you kept the clipping." West nodded. "Because I owed you something." maybe the truth. Silence fell between them, broken only by the pop of pine in the fire. Then a voice came from the shadows behind them. No, West. The truth's mine to tell. Clara spun. Elias Boone stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes dark. I shot your husband, he said flatly. Clara's mouth opened, but no sound came. Elias stepped forward, slow and solemn. He was my friend. Sam and I worked together years back, trusted each other. Then I found out he'd taken money to look the other way, knowing innocent folks would die, including kids. Clara's knees trembled. You killed him. I warned him to come clean. He laughed in my face, said the railroad owned half the territory, said people like me didn't matter. Elias looked at her, sorrow tightening his jaw. So I followed orders, pulled the trigger. Clara's voice finally returned, brittle as dry wood. Orders from who? Elias looked to West. From someone higher up in the crew. I was still in then. Couldn't say no. But when West found out, he nearly shot me himself. West stepped forward. I saved him, spared him, told him to disappear. He came with me instead. You let him stay? Clara asked, voice cracking. I made him work for every breath, West said. He owes me. And I owe you the truth. Elias didn't flinch. I carry it every day, Miss Nash. I'll carry it till I'm under the ground. Clara's world tilted. Her knees gave out, and she dropped into the chair, hands shaking. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind shifted. Inside, trust and memory burned together in the hearth. Clara stepped off the dusty trail into Red Bluff, heart hammering like a stagecoach wheel. The town had changed, or maybe she had. The boardwalk creaked under her boots, and the heat shimmered in waves. Gossip hung in the air like flies. Inside Colt's office, her eyes burned. She'd come looking for answers and justice. Sheriff Levi East Colt rose slowly from behind his desk. The lines beside his eyes deepened, as they always did, when he looked at her. Come looking for the rancher, or looking for more trouble? Clara Nash. She blocked the door behind her. Looking for the truth. He gestured to a chair, as if she feared sitting. She didn't. She sat. I have proof, she said, voice tight. Daisy found it in your office. She placed a folded document on his desk. A contract. Between you and the railroad company. Levi stared at the papers as if they'd turned to snakes. Sweat appeared at his temple. Clara leaned forward. What is that? He cleared his throat. That's business. She laughed hollowly. Business destroyed lives. My husband died in sabotage. My niece saved a piece of paper that names you co-conspirator. Red Bluff depends on that line. His voice trembled. Railroads bring money, goods, news. My town, my family's legacy runs on that track. You traded justice for funding. You hid rail workers willing to bypass safety for profit. He looked up, eyes accusing, as if she stole his dignity. You don't know what it takes to run a town. No. But I know what it costs when a sheriff sells his oath for dollars. Levi's jaw clenched. You have no idea what I've seen, what I've lost. You bring a storm down on this place, even more than your break-in. I came looking for peace, she said, but can't find peace when justice is buried under railroad ties. He closed his eyes. Pain flickered across his face. I thought I was doing right. You betrayed your badge, Clara said quietly. He stood. Clara did too, matching the fury behind his calm demeanor. Then maybe you do know what it takes. Later that day, Clara burned toward McCall Ranch, wind tearing at her skirts. Dust settled in her lungs. Each step echoed betrayal and hope. When she arrived, the cottage was quiet. West sat on the porch, shirtless, muscles relaxed but tension writ in his stance. Clara collapsed onto his knee. She held the papers in her hand. He took them without looking. You went after Colt. She nodded, eyes red. He sold the town west. My husband was collateral. West thumbed the paper between calloused fingers. He'd been on the take for years. When the rail company found out, they shut him out. Clara closed her eyes. The fire from memory flared. He hid it all until folks died. No, West corrected gently. He kept the dirt on himself. Kept the blame off the rail company. He thought he was saving someone. Not that kind of saving, Clara said. That kind of saving buries bodies. Silence thickened between them. From the porch steps, Daisy studied them both. Fear and admiration tangled in her gaze. Finally, West rose. He looked down at Clara. You've done enough. She tried to stand, but her legs trembled. He half carried her to the porch swing. The wood groaned under their weight. West sank beside her and wrapped a rough arm around her shoulders. Clara rested her head against him, feeling how much bigger the world seemed with one shoulder behind her. The town bell rang just past high noon. Clara heard it from the edge of McCall's pasture, sharp, urgent, like the clang of Judgment Day. Dust clouds rose in the distance. Wagons rolled in. Boots gathered on creaking boards. Something was stirring in Red Bluff. Daisy ran in from the barn out of breath. They're meeting at the church, she panted. Millie called it. Says it's time to vote whether West stays or goes. Clara didn't answer right away. Her fingers curled around the edge of the porch rail. The world tilted again, only this time she didn't sway. The church was full when Clara arrived. The townsfolk had come in their Sunday best, though it was Thursday, and their face carried the kind of righteous fury reserved for lynchings and sermons. Millie Hargrove stood near the pulpit, cheeks flushed, voice shrill. Are we going to wait until something worse happens? Until more secrets crawl out of that ranch like snakes? He's harboring killers. A woman who lies about her past. A girl that steals from our sheriff. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sheriff Colt leaned against the back wall, arms crossed. He didn't speak, but he didn't stop her either. West McCall is a criminal. Maybe he left the gang, but a dog don't stop biting just 'cause you take off its collar. Millie's voice cracked triumphant. This town is better off without him. There were nods. A few shouted, "Hear, hear," others shifted in their seats uneasy. Then the doors opened. Clara stepped in, boots echoing like gunshots on the wooden floor. Her hat was in her hand, her face was calm. And every man and woman in Red Bluff turned silent. She walked straight to the front, past Levi, past Millie, and stood before them like a woman who'd walked through fire and come out still standing. "My name is Clara Nash," she said. "You know that by now." Her voice was steady. "You also know I lost my husband. You whispered about it. Made it your dinner table gossip." Someone shifted in a pew. No one interrupted. "I've slept in a barn. I've been chased by storms. I've buried more than a man. I buried my illusions. And I still didn't run." She turned, eyes sweeping the crowd. "You think West McCall is your enemy? He's the only man in this town who didn't ask for anything but space to breathe." Millie tried to interrupt, but Clara raised her voice. "He's not hiding from justice. He's hiding from the same thing you all are. Shame, pause, grief." Her voice softened. "But I know the truth now, and I'm not leaving." The silence that followed was thick enough to drown in. Then someone stood. It was old Tom Beasley, a man who hadn't spoken in a town meeting since his wife died. "I remember when West fixed my roof for nothing." Then another. "Fed my kids when I was sick." Then another voice. "Stopped a bank fight without drawing his gun." Millie paled. Her control slipped like dust through dry fingers. Clara turned to Levy Colt, who hadn't moved. Their eyes locked. But he said nothing. And that was enough. They came in whispers before the flames. Late that night, Clara was jolted awake by the dull roar like distant thunder on the plains. Smoke drifted through the trees toward the stars. She scrambled from bed, heart pounding to the porch where West and Elias were already loading buckets of water. "Barn's on fire," West said through grit. He didn't look at her, just passed her a leather bucket. Clara grabbed it and ran with pounding boots across cracked ground. The barn flickered red, consuming hay bales and the smell of feed. Inside, the horses stamped panicked. Elias barreled through flames, dragging straining bodies free into the damp night. Without thinking, Clara helped with her shawl, dampening sparks until a beam snapped, blocking the exit. She backed away as West shouted for Elias. Seconds later, West reappeared, cradling Elias in one arm. Smoke choked Clara's lungs. She fought back tears and confusion. They escaped into the barn's stone cellar below, where the heat couldn't reach and walls glowed with ember light. Together they huddled close. West's arm was steady around her, the scent of smoke and sweat and fear weaving around them. Clara pressed tight. "Thank God," she whispered, voice trembling. But West shook his head. He saved them. All of them. Elias lay limply against Clara. His breath was shallow, eyes glazed. Clara reached out, fear twisting inside her. Outside, sheriff's whistles and shouting doused the night. The town came running, lanterns bobbing, faces terrified. At the edge of the blaze, Levi Colt stood among them, broken. In the blackened aftermath, the barn smoldered. Horses shuddered inside temporary pens. Neighbors milled, talking in low, urgent tones. Millie Hargrove hovered, mouth open, as if she might vomit. Clara wiped ashes from her cheeks. She scanned the faces, searching. When she found Levi, she marched toward him. He met her halfway, jaw slack. "They said they lied." Clara held up her hand. "I have something to say." Silence rippled like water. She turned to those gathered. "You think West is dangerous because he was different. You think your whispers saved this town. But look around. The danger wasn't in a man who saved your children's school. The danger was in the lies you spun." The crowd fell silent. Then she looked at Levi. "You hid the gang. You hid the sabotage. You hid the truth." Her voice wavered with sorrow and rage. Levi lowered his head. Dust flew on the wind. Clara took a deep breath. "But you can change that. Tell them now." The sheriff swallowed, then spoke into the stunned quiet. "I was wrong. I chose safety over justice. I kept things quiet to keep this town safe." His voice cracked. "I betrayed my duty. I'm sorry." A breeze swept through, sweeping ashes. The crowd exhaled as one, tension breaking. That evening, Clara sat by the reconstructed hearth in the cabin. The smell of smoke still lingered in West's shirt. She sipped tea, legs curled under her, Daisy asleep nearby. West sat opposite, bruised arm, bandaged gaze distant. Clara's voice was quiet and worn. "You saved Elias. He saved the horses. But what about yourself?" West looked down, hand curled around the mug. "I've been running from a life I couldn't fix. Now I think it might be worth staying for you." Clara stared at the flame, tears she didn't trust rising. "Would you stay with me?" He met her eyes, sober, steady. And she saw it, not love yet, but the seed of it, glowing warm. "Only if you'll have me," he whispered. Clara's heart threatened to break open. She nodded, voice thick. "Stay." Clara stirred, awake to the low rumble of voices, soft at first, then swelling. She blinked against the orange glow that slithered across the cabin walls. Outside, embers danced in the night. She climbed from her resting place beside West and stumbled toward the window. The barn stood swallowed in flame, like a beast of fire roaring under a blood sky. West was already moving, boots thudding against the floorboards. He swept past, eyes narrowed, face rugged with determination. "Clara," he said quietly, "help Daisy." Together they rode into the night. Her heart thundered louder than the crack of the burning barn. When they neared, Julia's cry rent the air, a sound Clara refused to trace. She dismounted and pushed through the haze, spotting Elias, fighting to wrest a panicked mare clear of collapsing beams. In a heartbeat, she joined him. They pulled. The wood cracked. The horse lunged free and bolted into the cold, sweet air beyond. Then a beam groaned and fell. Elias caught the edge on his shoulder. Clara rushed forward, scooping him down as wood slammed to earth inches from his head. They ran. Inside the barn cellar, they crouched, trembling, soot-streaked, wrapped in silence and the smell of burnt straw. Clara pressed a towel to Elias's wound. His breath rattled, but he was alive. West dropped beside her, and she turned to him, eyes glistening. He saved everything, Clara breathed. West closed his eyes. He did. When dawn broke, the town gathered beside the ruined barrels of water, and soot-soaked tools were abandoned now. Faces were hollow, lit by rising sun. Millie Hargrove hovered, guilt-thick eyes down. Levi Colt was at the edge, badge stained with ash and shame. Clara wove through them toward the sheriff, rag in hand, tearing at embers that still clung to coats and boots. She stopped before Colt. "You saw him?" she began. "Every day trusted him. He risked his life for yours and for what you buried." Levi lifted his head, voice strained. I was wrong." A murmur rose. Clara raised her voice calm, as leaning on West's quilted shoulder back at the ranch. "West didn't flame that barn to hurt you. He stayed for this town. He stayed for the truth." Her gaze drifted to Elias, being tended by neighbors who'd once hissed judgments under their breath. "He's more sheriff than Colt was tonight," she said. "Elias stayed when you'd have run." He saw it. Silence falsified strength in that moment. Then harsh voices broke free. "We'll help rebuild. We were wrong to doubt him. One more chance for forgiveness." In that fire-scarred field, surrendering to truth felt almost holy. Evening found Clara back by the hearth in the cabin. Daisy was asleep at her feet, fresh bread and warm tea on the table. The lamp flickered. West entered, shirt dusted with ash, eyes softer. In his hand was a folded paper. He set it before Clara. Her breath caught land papers stamped in her name. "No ring, just promise. I own this place," he said simply. "But this land, this home is yours. If you'll have it." Clara's fingers shook as she unfolded the document. Her voice caught. "West." He knelt, eyes steady. "Stay. Turn a new storm into calm. We'll do it together." She nodded, tears falling. She reached for him, weaving hot grief, relief, and something tender between them. Late that night, a letter arrived. Daisy, visiting the post room, slipped it to Clara by lantern light. Handwritten, elegant. "To Clara, wherever you are." Clara broke the seal with trembling fingers. It was from Samuel Nash. He signed with his name, from a prison, a remote station, wherever he still lived. He wasn't dead. Clara found a new home beside a man who had been buried under the weight of his past. West offered her the rarest thing, not just love, but trust. But as night fell, a letter arrived too late and turned everything upside down. Samuel Nash, the husband believed dead, now reaches out from the shadows with answers yet untold. So what waits for Clara at the next crossroad? A home. Or a secret that refuses to stay buried. "Stay in my bed tonight," he whispered. But the past never truly sleeps.